Greetings MYM, this is Kupa666 here, and now seeing as how I've participated in MYM since MYM 3, it's now MYM 13, that's 10 contests. I think it's about time I sat down and ranked each of my movesets. Seeing as how I do not have a webcam and I do not believe I have Skype installed on this computer, I'm going to be unable to converse with any of you while I review these. Therefore, as Warlord said in FA's recent ranking, it will come off as me stupidly talking to myself. But seeing as the alternative is me not ranking the sets at all or putting it off further as I have done, I think I will take that risk. Thank you very much. So, let's jump right into this analysis. The bottom slot here, I should say, is filled by every set I have made from the MYM 3 to MYM 4 period. And largely the reason I pushed off this self-ranking so far, or as long as I have, is because there's very little I can point to about any one of these sets and say that that aspect of it makes it more deserving of a high ranking than any other set on the list. The play style of Tiga does not make it more worthy of a bottom ranking, or of a higher ranking than Yao-Man per se. Going over the list right here, we have Andy's Toys 1.0, Timon and Pumbaa, Indiana Jones, Bowser 1.0, Tiga, Samurai Panda, Captain Jack Sparrow, Harry Potter, King K. Rool 1.0, Harry Houdini, Simba, Yao-Man, The Beast Trio, Woody, Cranky Kong, Ken Huang, Hades 1.0, Doggy and a Bear, Clump and Crusher 1.0, Captain Scurvy 1.0, and Iago and Zazu. These sets were largely made, one, out of the ease of making a set with no detail at the time. I could largely make most of these in an hour or two, therefore I posted a hell of a lot of them at the time. And I had a great time doing it, quite clearly, but compared to literally any other set above them, they pale quite a bit in comparison. I won't go out of my way to hate on any one of them, but they're newcomer sets, you know. I enjoyed making them, but I also enjoyed making the sets higher than them as well, or at least most of them. The closest you can say to any of these sets having anything of quality is Hades' Grab Game, which almost on its own entirely warrants the sequel, so to speak. But otherwise, it's best that we leave these guys as fond memories and not sift through them too much, lest they become soiled even more than they already are in retrospect. So the next set we have on this list is a set that entirely deserves to be soiled, and coincidentally enough has poop in its name. YouTube Poop Arthur. Initially I tagged this as just regular Arthur, but then seeing as how it has literally nothing from Arthur the Show, I rebranded it as YouTube Poop Arthur. And looking over the set, the neutral special starts up. It's called Sex Season, a multi-purpose move if there ever was one. It has an effect that allows you to charge for 7 seconds. Reading the set, finally, if Arthur is allowed to charge for 7 seconds, he yells out rotting shit and finally jerks his hand up, halting his rocking and getting back up, the move ending and the computer vanishing. This heals him of 10 damage over 7 seconds, and the moveset is largely just meant to be shocking, a shocking compilation of all the Arthur YouTube poops that existed at the time. Yeah, I largely just ranked it above the MYM 4 sets and MYM 3 sets because of its train wreck value that you can get from looking back over it in this age, even though it could fit very cleanly into those into that bottom ranking. Next on the list we have Pennywise the Dancing Clown 1.0. I believe Warlord had this placing fairly high on his ranking of worst playstyles or shittiest representations of the character. I don't even remember, but it would be worthy of a high ranking on any one of those negative lists, simply because of all of the numerous negative aspects that it has within it. It is a combo heavyweight and carries all of the negativity of a combo heavyweight, but accompanying it is a delicious special mechanic known as salting the meat. And as mentioned earlier, Pennywise's whole motive is scaring the living daylights out of children. He thinks this is akin to salting the meat, so in Smash, it's only natural that he would follow through with his endless hunger. So as a result, if he does not build 150 damage on characters using the combo attacks that supposedly exist within the set, they will respawn right back at 0 damage. While this may sound like a huge hindrance to Pennywise, he has ways to bend this rule. And he does supposedly bend this rule by sending out haunted fridges that Tim Curry supposedly references in the film, by transforming into the spider from the shitty climax of the movie that is universally despised, essentially. All I can say is I thank God for the sequel that redeems this set, because there is nothing redeemable about this one at all, ever. So, next on the list we have possibly the most universally known combo heavyweight in Captain K. Rool 1.0. Everyone knows why combo heavyweights are so terrible at this rate, and it's laughable looking over it. I'm reading it as I speak, and 2 of the specials right off the bat are essentially copy-pasted word from Warlord's MYM5 K. Rool, not because Captain doesn't have other potential to work with, but because they're his signature things. He sucks you in and then shoots out big black balls, so there. Ironically enough, looking over this thing, his grab game is somewhat decent in that he extends out a wind hitbox that pulls in victims when they were caught in the suction. If this grab game, or at least the grab itself, were pasted over to the modern Captain with a few modifications, it could have been a real boost for that Captain, but we'll get to him later. And let's leave this one sailing off into the sunset as he does at the end of his game. Wart is essentially Captain K. Rool. Funnily enough, considering the K. Rool haters say that K. Rool is Wart, is a redesigned Wart. Fuck them all to hell. Wart is essentially Captain K. Rool, but I ranked him higher because he's essentially a more colorful set to read. Rather than just having every single move be particles from a blunderbuss, Wart actually brings out minions within his set and then has the option to devour them or shit them out or dick around with them for whatever reason. It's a little bit more fun to read over again, but there's still little to promote about it, and quite a bit to hate on, actually. Okay, so Clubba is quite a forgotten set, possibly the most forgettable set in my modern or somewhat modern repertoire. He's essentially, looking back over it, he's essentially the Captain K. Rool of the trap genre, in that he should never ever be trapping characters, or his character should never be trapping characters, but lo and behold he does. And he doesn't even do it well. He has 2 traps. One, he digs some primitive hole, like the Wild Man I pictured him as at the time. And the rest is he sheds the spikes off of his club for no reason whatsoever. He tries to modify the priority on his club, even though it's a disjointed fucking weapon to begin with. Yeah, I think you all would be well suited to look at this thing over if you want a laugh, and by a laugh I mean an absolute train wreck. Captain Scurvy 2.0 is Clubba still. Is a more entertaining Clubba, because unlike Clubba, who just uses, oddly enough, his club, Captain Scurvy goes out of his way to introduce every single pirate trope in the book into the set. His side special is literally the Pirate Handbook, which is apparently written by Captain K. Runch. There's also a lot of assorted DKC2 references in here. He spawns the Cat of Nine Tails as an unfunny joke. He throws Crook's hands. It comes off as essentially Wizard's Crow, but tacked on to Captain Scurvy instead. Yeah, you could take literally any pirate set and stick it in here, and it would be adored in MYM4. It was shat on in MYM5. But I am very glad that it did. This was possibly the biggest turning set, or one of the biggest turning sets in my career. Turning point sets in my career, in that it taught me the importance of playstyle, the importance of actually putting thought into the playstyle instead of just shitting out, oh, he combos you. Oh, if you're on the edge, you better shoot out a cannonball. Might work. Who knows? So after that, we have Bowser Jr. and Shadow Mario, who scored highly on one of the most TLDR sets. I believe Silver wrote it, and he said that this is largely ignored as a TLDR set, considering Warlord was flailing around Cortini as the most TLDR set at the time. I don't know why Shadow Mario was considered a positive character to add onto the set. I don't know why I thought that at the time, because clearly he just reading through the set in one sitting, if you can stomach that, or even if you can just speed read through the set at the time, he is the quality just deteriorates as you go through him. I believe the Silver ranking pointed out that Shadow Mario is a little bit closer to what Modern Junior, Winner Junior is at the time of MYM 9. Yeah, little to discuss about these guys. They do insanely random shit that should not have placed top 10 over Lemmy, over Arthas, for Christ's sake. For the back air, he spawns Cataquacks and Tap-Taps and Bloopers. Oh my, he spawns them at whim. His F air is a Mario Kart item box that gives you items. Oh joy. Shadow Mario just introduces every single Sunshine enemy, essentially. He spawns the fake Boos from Hotel Delfino. He brings out the Petey Piranha Thorns. Yeah, enough said. Let's move past these guys before you tune out of utter fucking boredom. Okay, next on the list we have essentially every joke set I've ever written, including Masahiro Sakurai and Dr. Tiki and Scooby Kong. I rate these guys over every set below them because not only do they have a playstyle, it exists, and it is somewhat coherent, and it is consistent throughout the set. Dr. Tiki starts out the set by plaguing Brawl's gameplay. He blesses it. He gives it the holy touch of an incredibly potent CPU of the prominent Tiki bad guys. Who cares if Tiki's spit on the tradition of balance in the process? And he goes through all of this all the way up until the grab game, which is him removing a random aspect of the game, because who needed it anyways? Who needs your water stages, your ice stages, your additional supporting characters? Yeah, fuck those guys. Yeah, I believe he was Warlord's first 10 out of 10 rating on his ranking ever. I have no idea why he doesn't acknowledge this, because Dr. Tiki is a legitimate set, and he had best be remembered as such, considering Retro is likely producing DKCR2 as we speak. Okay, next we have Sebastian. I have very little fondness of the character. At the time, I believed I just wanted to make a set for a crab. But when I tried to make Claw Grip from Super Mario Bros. 2, I realized how utterly little potential he has. He throws rocks and speaks like a pirate in the remake for the GBA, I guess. So I gave it to Sebastian. Sebastian is largely considered a generic, fast character. I believe he has some countering elements. He can get into his tiny shell and counter stuff, I guess. Yeah, really not that much to promote about him. I guess if you revamped his neutral special where he clamps onto you and can attack you from there, there would be some potential with that, obviously, but he doesn't take advantage of it here. So moving along, we come to Scar and the Hyenas. A decent enough set, I guess. But looking back over it, or I looked it over a little bit before, about a week ago. It's Olimar. It's villainous Olimar in that he can send out the hyenas who have precious little differences between them. I believe Shenzi has power and Ed has some drool effect with him, and Bonsai is fast and some shit. It makes literally no difference within the set. As in, like, there's a special that allows Scar to send out the hyenas. There's one where he roars and calls them back, like Olimar's down special. It has multiple grabs. The down grab obviously being the ledge throw we all know and love, and that nearly entirely sums Scar up as a gimping character, or would sum him up if Disney Rumble ever got around to making a Scar set. I don't even know if we're doing a Scar set. I think he's now a Simba costume, but yeah, Scar had some degree of focus, which is surprising for his time, but he's Olimar, plain and simple. Triclide is also fairly Olimar-esque in that he is focused on growing heads onto his body rather than starting with 3 heads from the get-go, and the heads just give him more power, and if you attack off the heads, then he reverts back to a simple snake, fairly useless. Yeah, I think he's slightly more colorful than Scar in that there's some degree of strategy with spacing, and that you have to use your tweeter minion to space while Triclide glows the heads, and there's a few attacks that modify the hitbox he uses on you so that he defends the growing head while he hits you, which is something, and it could be revisited in a better set. But it was largely TLDR, didn't take advantage of it at the time. So, yeah, I'm largely BSing most of these descriptions just because they, honestly, they don't warrant much of one to begin with. Nobody remembers Kupa for these sets, for Sebastian, for Captain Scurvy, so... the first modern set on the list is the Medic. Oh my god. Medic was essentially a failed experiment, as quite a few people have said. I've said it in the chat recently when I've been in the chat. The concept was essentially formed about a year ago last year, to be honest, in that you mix and match elements from characters or from different entities. I believe Dave suggested we add it to Mad Seinstein from Wario with his minions, and that he takes random minions from the series and can piece together their parts to form like a dream minion. So when the TF2 movement came up, I decided to give it a shot on Medic, who is a character known for such experimentation. When I got into the set, I realized, I think a little bit ways past the special, that the movement could it could not be supported by standards and grab games and such, because the set is largely comprised of making a minion and then controlling that minion. So there's the Medic is essentially the player, and he would not get a moveset in that case, if that makes any sense. Probably does not. That and the fact that crippling the characters to such an extreme extent is obviously terrible. I believe Aggie mentioned it, or someone did, and this is why Smatey pulled it off correctly in MYM 12. If the parts you take from your opponents, if they do not lose those parts, then the concept can be applied much more liberally. But considering Medic has no choice but to literally bone saw off every single limb to construct a competent minion, a mutation, yeah, it's a failed experiment. Not that he has any, not that he's unfamiliar with those, of course. So then he's now stuck unceremoniously below Aaron Ryan on the list. Aaron Ryan is the worst set of the Punch-Out movement, pretty much. He is a generic offensive rushdown character with the option to lean back into his ropes at close range and counter his opponent's attacks with, I think, combos, god-awful combos, but that kind of dancing around the opponent could be pulled off well, but considering in Aaron Ryan, it's constricted to one move, and that one move is nearly entirely based on your opponent rather than your own skill, and that you have to lean back when your opponent uses your move rather than whenever you choose to. The playstyle pretty much falls flat on its face in that regard. Otherwise, his ranged glove shit never really is given the focus it deserves. I think it's just used as a way to pull in foes when Ryan should be rushing them down in the first place. Next, we have Clump and Crusher 2.0. For a long period of time, I thought these guys were somewhat underrated by the mass population just because they were entirely sick of my Kremling obsession. They were sick of the characters. Yeah. The playstyle of hiding behind Crusher is made fairly consistent. He never really deviates from that, but most of the time, um, uh, Crusha is basically just lunging at the foe or charging at them in some way, shape, or form. If Clump stomps on his foot or something, or he throws his helmet like a frisbee and Crusha chases it. That, or you just station Crusha in one place watching TV or doing push-ups or some shit, and then Clump camps from behind there because he's utterly useless on his own. Another reason the set very likely was ignored was considering it was how long it is. After most moves, it lists the move, it lists the regular move, and then it lists the move again with Clump in parentheses. So it basically doubles the length without adding much substance at all to the set. So yeah, this is a fairly middle of the road MYM6 set for me at the time, although it is far and away better than the utter tripe that was Pennywise and Captain K. Rool, quite clearly. So, next on the list we have Lord Voldemort, a set my next set in my list. For all I know, based on how I finish this ranking, he'll be out by the time I publish this ranking, but Voldemort 1.0 was largely just supposed to be a contrast to all the heavyweights I'd made at the time. A light character, a floaty character, a character who can glide around liberally, camping from a range. God, I have no idea why I tried to put so much focus on that when he actually introduced the reincarnation genre as seen, or as will be seen, whatever, in the remake. He takes out Horcruxes, but the way I had spawned it was, instead of just placing the Horcrux on the stage and interacting with it, it's essentially Jigglypuff's rest, but with the Horcrux, so that once he sends an opponent into a star KO, he can just make Horcruxes and be rendered essentially invincible. Yeah. Karen came along a contest later and pulled it off a million times better than this. Though it does deserve credit for introducing the concept, but yeah, that's about all it deserves credit for, to be honest. Next, and this is the last set that I'm ranking in the outright bad category, is Hades 2.0. For a fairly long period of time during the contest, this was promoted as a front runner that would never be derailed because of just how sheer awesome it was. It was organized well. It had flames next to the headers. Obviously, the best set ever, guys. Totes. But yeah, it brings back the grab game. It does. It uses Lucario's mechanic to some extent, except with Hades getting angry, and that if he's losing a match, he'll get pissed off even more so than he already is, and therefore, when he's losing, he'll put more effort into it than if he's winning. It's a shitty mechanic based around personality and manipulation of personality. As a general rule, if you have to build a set based around the personality of a character, you had best know what you're doing, or else it's going to fail miserably, completely and utterly miserably. I manipulated the mechanic, I think, to some respectable degree with Pain and Panic, in that Hades could sit back and watch while they fought the match, and I think he healed whenever he was in the background. Let me look this over. I have largely pushed this out of my mind at this rate. Pain and Panic are shitty characters who are essentially just based around comboing. Oh yes, that's it. Hades is a combo heavyweight. I was going to bring that up as why he sucks and is ranked in the bad category, and why I'm fully expecting whenever Warlord releases the new one to completely and utterly run circles around this. If Hades is ever falling behind during a match, never fear, you can camp out in the background while your minions do your work for you. They can build damage at the drop of a hat, so just sit back and let them do their combo-y goodness while you sip your worm spaghetti. God, I'm tempted to revise this and rank it lower just for that, because at least Voldemort introduced reincarnation, whereas Hades, he brings back the grab game from the old MYM4 Hades, which... So the Hades doesn't even deserve credit for that, and therefore he is still a shitty set for an awesome character, and that is quite regrettable indeed. Fortunately, that will no longer be the case for most of these sets, because most of them are in fact somewhat good, if not above average to awesome. So with that, the negativity of this ranking will hopefully decrease quite a bit, so I can reflect on these sets in a more pro-con fashion, rather than just pointing out why they suck, the reason you suck according to TV tropes. So